Everyone, it's Reed here, and we're going to be continuing with our fundamental JavaScript video series. So in our last couple videos, we've been heading toward this idea of manipulating time and then putting it into the browser for the user to see based on their interaction. So far we have a button here that on hover, it does this nice pointer, and when we click it, it says, "Hey Reed, it's Saturday." Or if you want to put in, whatever user's name, you can put in your own name in the JavaScript and it's going to say, "Hey, your name, hey Bob, it's the day." Okay, that's neat from an academic standpoint, but really not altogether that useful. So let's go ahead and in this video use the idea of time manipulation to start creating a timer app. So what we want ultimately is to take in a time value from our user on the web page, and we want to count down from that time to 0, and maybe we'll add some kind of effects letting them know that the time is almost up, letting the user know when the time has reached 0, kind of like an alarm. So to do that, we are going to use our concepts of functional programming along with a few other kind of best practices in coding. So you guys have noticed in the first videos, we started building stuff up in the console over here. So we started building things here, and then as they worked and we verified that they worked, we started moving them into the DOM, or the document object model, where the user can interact and see what we've done. So another thing I've been doing for the past couple videos is saying, like, hey, I'm going to talk about the differences in variable types. So we've touched on const a few times. Const is something like a time limit, where let's say we want to set that equal to 5 seconds. So this could be a static value that should not change for the rest of the application. Eventually it might change, but for now, let's just say the default default time limit, right? Or I think what we want to do in the future is a user input time value. And so the assumption for now is that this will be in seconds. I would love to get a timer counting down from, using seconds and milliseconds, kind of like an actual stopwatch would. So we're going to need a few other values as well. But time limit is, once we assign it, it's not going to change for now. So we also need a value called time passed. So time passed is something we do expect to change, right? So each second that goes by, we want to compare the time passed to the time limit, and then that way we can get the current time that we display to the user. So after 1 second with a time limit of 5 seconds, we want to display 4 seconds remain. Okay, easy enough to follow there. So we are using the keyword value let. This is a special keyword in JavaScript, and that signifies that this memory store is going to be something that we can manipulate over time. We can reassign the value to it. So it's perfect in a case like this because it's literally changing over time. So to start, we want to set the value equal to 0. So you can do this actually all in one line, or later on you can imagine this code in a different part of our script here. We could say time passed equals to 0, and it's the exact same thing, but just because it's more succinct and it's easier to read, I think we can just put it on one line. Okay, time passed equals 0 is what we are initializing this variable to hold. So this is just hanging on to our concept of time passed, and again, we'll change it over time. So we can also have a time remaining variable, and this will change also, but we will initialize it to time limit. Okay, so the time remaining, just like time passed starts at 0, the time remaining is going to start at the max amount of time, which is the time limit that we've imposed into the application. For now, it's being hard-coded. Later on, we want to grab that value from a user. Okay, cool. So what we want to do is, just like our get time button here, we're going to change what's displayed in the application to something else on click. So on click, we might start or toggle the state between kind of playing and pausing of a stopwatch. So instead of just displaying a value, a single value, we want to display one that is changing over time. So let's get started with that. We kind of have most of the tools here, except for the actual time change. So let's go ahead and write a function, and we will call it start timer. So nothing too fancy. That's you know, a good way or a good practice is to name your variables based on what they're going to do. That way you can get as close to what's called self-documenting code as possible. So anyone could be able to read your program, and instead of having a function that says like st, like, you know, maybe you could be thinking like, well, this is shorter, so I'll save some space in memory, and that might be true. If I go back and read this a month from now, I'm not going to have a clue what that means, or it's going to take me some work to try to figure out what I was thinking back then. But if you're looking at someone else's code, you will have no idea. So trust me on that, it's going to make everyone a lot happier. So we want to do the time. Yeah, okay. We're going to use a quick pass through of what will happen when we start a timer. So let's just pretend like we're doing one iteration. So time passed is going to increase over time, right? As we go, the time that has gone by will increase. So there are a few ways to write this. We could just say time passed is equal to time passed plus 1. So we can actually assign this value to itself in a way and then increment that. Another way that we could do this in a shorter fashion is just say it's plus equals 1. And actually for the number 1, just incrementing it by a single value, and a shorter way still is just to write plus plus. Okay, so that was a lot of shorthand. It's just something you guys can take or leave at this moment, but the underlying theory is the most important part, so let's just keep focused on that. So we're increasing the time passed by 1 in one kind of iteration of our timer beginning, which also means that the time remaining is going to be the time limit minus the newly assigned value of time passed. So this should change also. So our time limit is still 5 seconds. The time passed now is 1 second because we've incremented it here. So this should result in 4, right? So let's go ahead and console log time remaining just to check on ourselves before we keep going. And you always want to make sure that you're calling your function. So we are expecting time remaining or 4 to show up in the console. Let's check that out. So refresh, boom, 4. Oh, looking good. Okay, so far so good. Nothing earth-shattering or groundbreaking here, but it's nice to make sure that your logic is in place as you go. And then let's just go ahead and bring that over to the DOM. Let's say class timer label, or actually let's use an ID because we're not going to have multiple stopwatches on this page. So ID timer label, I'll just copy that because we're going to reference it over here, and we want to put this value inside of there. So we can start out by saying document because we're accessing the window. We're going to get it by, where is that? I don't know. Get it by ID though. And we have our timer label ID. So we've gotten that. And we are going to set its inner HTML, if you remember, just like before, to time remaining. Okay, cool. So now all we're expecting to see that's different is there should be a 4 over here on the screen when we refresh. Whoops. Get elements by ID. This should be get element. Okay. Small little mistake. You know, it's nice that they give you these warnings. Here's our 4. All's looking good. Sweet. So we are well on our way to manipulating our timer. And just like we talked about in best practices earlier, we actually want to grab the value of this p tag, this timer label ID, and instead of hitting it each time, because eventually we're going to do this at least once per second. Or you can imagine if we're keeping track of like milliseconds, this could be being output very frequently, and we don't need to reference this variable or try to grab this variable out of the DOM thousands of times. We just need to get it once, and then we can put the inner HTML into that. So, whoops, I need to copy this piece here. So, our timer label. So I've used camel case here. It's a little different here because this is a CSS class, and this is just some notation. We can get more into the particulars of why this is a nice way to write CSS class names later on, and as we kind of style our stopwatch. So look out for that in future videos. So just know for now there is a method to the madness here, and it's not completely arbitrary the way we're writing out variable names. So timer label, and let's just make sure that that works. So our for should still be there. It is. Great. Okay, so now what we want to do is provide some sense of time to this application, and there's actually a function that is native to JavaScript. It's provided as part of JavaScript called setInterval. And setInterval takes as an argument a function and a time that you want to, here, let's just write this piece out. A function here, and the second argument is the amount of time in milliseconds that you want what is inside of this to do. So after this amount of time, everything in here is going to happen. Okay, so all of these are very quick actions, and we're just going to cut them from here and paste them into here. So every second now, every 1,000 milliseconds, we will increment the time passed. We will change the time remaining, and then we're going to put that time remaining into the DOM. Or rather, we're going to replace what is in timer labels inner HTML with that time remaining value. So let's see how that works. Hey, nice. All right, we are well on our way. Oh, okay, so we have some negative values here. So there's something we need to do about that. And let's go ahead and talk about some shorthand first. We can change, actually, let's leave this for next video. I think this is a great spot to stop for now. So next video, we're going to talk about some shorthand values and why you might use them. And we're also going to talk about getting rid of memory leaks. So just like a good commenter, I'm going to write in what we're talking about, memory leaks and function shorthand. So that's the work we want to do next time. Here's some more work that we want to do next time. I love keeping track of it this way. So I'll see you guys in the next video. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button and subscribe and all those standard YouTube begging things. But it really does help because we're trying to grow this channel into a pretty cool coding community. So appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next video.